Hey cats, it's your midsole man, EDDBUD here. I've been asked 1,000 times for this one. People out there want a direct comparison between the VAPORFLY 3 and the ALPHAFLY 3. The top tier Nike shoes for 2024. Which one should you pick up, perhaps if you can only afford one? A discounted pair of the VAPORFLY 3, or perhaps hold out for one of those very hard to get hold of ALPHAFLY 3s. Let's take a closer look at these two models, which are perhaps a bit closer in weight, but still with that large price difference. Thanks for tuning in, people, it's always appreciated. Help the channel to continue to grow naturally as well by hitting that subscribe button, but also give this video a thumbs up like. It really helps out. Dankeschön. First, we have some stats on these two models. The VAPORFLY 3 coming in a little lighter for a UK 11 or US 12 at 235 grams or 8.3 ounces. Though in an 11, the ALPHAFLY 3 is actually quite a bit lighter than the previous models. It's now 350 grams. So it's about an ounce heavier. Very little in it these days. Certainly very different to where we had the VAPORFLY Next Percent 2 and the ALPHAFLY 2. It's quite a considerable difference there. The VAPORFLY all round is much narrower, especially in the heel area of the shoe. There's a lot less surface area there, so if you're somebody that wants something that's got a little more stability, perhaps the ALPHAFLY 3 is a better way to go. I found the VAPORFLY 3 as well a lot more restrictive in terms of the arch area. You certainly feel that sort of arch hump. It's not quite so bad in the ALPHAFLY 3. Everything really in the VAPORFLY 3 feels minimized compared to the ALPHAFLY. One area that I do have to mention is the heel counter. It's much more considerable here in the VAPORFLY. The VAPORFLY 3 sits a little bit lower in terms of your Achilles, and that padding does quite a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of the lockdown. Very different in the ALPHAFLY 3. You've got that sort of puffy padded collar here and a very low profile kind of counter. The upper does most of the heavy lifting when it comes to the actual lockdown of the shoe. We've got a similar distribution of rubber, short A durometer softness here. It's a little bit softer up front, aside from those orange sections here on the ALPHAFLY 3. In the heel, Nike are using a smoother but slightly more durable, tougher rubber. We've got to talk upper first. Upper-wise, certainly the ALPHAFLY 3 is a more fitting shoe all round. I found I needed way less lace tension to get a really good lockdown in this one over the VAPORFLY 3. In fact, there's loads less upper material here than in my pair of the VAPORFLY 3. Though I think if breathability is your main kind of attribute you're looking for, then the VAPORFLY is hands down better. It's extremely breathable through the midfoot through to the toe box. Very, very flexible sort of material as well. But I found it to be a little bit too generous from that aspect. I mean, Nike suggests that this is a fly knit material here in the VAPORFLY. It's very different from any fly knit materials that I've seen on other shoes that they've released. I'm not entirely sure either that the offset lacing really worked all that well for me. Just felt like a bit of a faff, you know. You take a while to get the shoe exactly where you want it. With the ALPHAFLY, a much simpler affair. Put your foot in, lace up, and you're gone. I think I just prefer the fit of the ALPHAFLY 3 this time round in this iteration of the shoes. I think perhaps the reason that the VAPORFLY is coming in a bit lighter is due to those holes across the toe box. They really have weight relieved everything they can. Comfort wise, I don't really feel there's anything in it really between these two shoes, but in use and just sort of functionality, the ALPHAFLY 3 is the best in terms of upper. So if I had to pick one of these two models, for upper, it's got to be the ALPHAFLY 3 this time. Let's talk midsole now. Midsole wise, there is quite the difference between these two shoes, certainly underfoot. I have found that the ALPHAFLY 3 and the VAPORFLY 3 compress quite a bit over time. This pair I've got about 100 miles in, and I've got about 100 kilometers into this pair so far. I'm already seeing about a 2 to 3 millimeter drop in terms of compression in the heel area of the shoe. So do be aware of that if you pick up a pair and you're gonna perhaps, you know, leave them in the box. They're gonna keep the magic a little bit longer. The ZoomX foam in these shoes is extremely forgiving. If you're on the fence, you know, about picking up a pair of these and trying it out, I would suggest you do, just to say you've worn them and you've tried them, you felt that magic. Though I feel that the VAPORFLY 3 loses that magic, and the ALPHAFLY 3 kind of gets better and better the more I use it. It's a forgiving foam, but it's not going to last forever. I think Nike were quite smart in this proto pair of the VAPORFLY 3s They've got this kind of patterning and kind of different textures to try and hide that creasing. You can see it's happening quite a bit here on the ALPHAFLY 3. Lots and lots of creasing all over the midsole of the shoe. I mean, if that bothers you, then just don't buy these, but that is inherently an attribute of the foam. There's a boatload of exposed foam here in the ALPHAFLY 3, and I found that when it does get wet, well, it really doesn't like that at all. Especially if it's cold, it just creases up a little bit like an elephant's foot. They've been smart about it here in the VAPORFLY 3. They've got these ridges here. It kind of disguises the creasing, but when you look at it, it's still there. It's just sort of disguised really due to the ridges. I found the VAPORFLY 3 is a lot more aggressive in the mid to forefoot area of the shoe. It's more of that sort of rocker type shoe really. It wants you to land midfoot and push forwards, whereas the ALPHAFLY is almost begging you to land in the heel to cushion the impact of that foot strike, and that aspect of the shoe is amplified even more than ever due to the extensive cutouts in the midsole under the heel. Due to that fact now, I think the VAPORFLY 3 is perhaps a slightly more versatile shoe across the distances. If you're going to be racing some 5 and 10Ks, this is certainly a better shoe for that. The sheer bulk and sort of compressiveness of the heel here, I think, makes it perhaps better for the half or full marathon distance. I think the positioning of the plate here as well is a little bit different, obviously, because it's kind of perched atop the air units here. Reminds me a little bit, I suppose, of the plate positioning in the Metaspeed Sky Paris. A bit more for a stride running, perhaps. The heel narrowness indicates that this shoe really wants to land on the midfoot and forefoot area. So I think that's how Nike are trying to position these two shoes now. You know, a versatile type race shoe, 5K through to the marathon if you've got a very sort of standardized, consistent stride, and this one very much the ultimate cushion for that half or full marathon distance. VAPORFLY 3 certainly increased cadence sort of runner, and I just see them sort of trying to differentiate between these two shoes more and more. I wouldn't bet against the VAPORFLY 4 having some more exposed midsole cutaway. I reckon they'll try to bring it in line in terms of weight with the Asics Metaspeed Sky Paris. That's like a clear 25 grams or almost an ounce lighter than Nike's VAPORFLY. So I think if I had to pick one in terms of midsole, I'd probably err with the ALPHAFLY 3 this time. It's just a bit more usable all round. I think I could get a bit more for my money with this one. In terms of outsole as well, I think the ALPHAFLY has just got a little bit more to it with the slightly deeper lugs and ridges here. I mean, both of these are road racing shoes, let's not go away from that. But over significant mileage, I'm not seeing too much degradation to that rubber. The discs on the ALPHAFLY 3 are in fact really, really durable. They're showing very little signs of wear whatsoever, about 100 kilometers in. And the black rubber that surrounds that is even better. There's almost no sign of wear at all. I think that might be due to the fact that those orange discs protrude out from the outsole underfoot section a little bit more than the black rubber. The same can be said for the orange rubber here on the VAPORFLY 3 in the mid to forefoot, though I think the lug-like structure that we've got here in the ALPHAFLY 3 just elevates it a little bit above the outsole on the VAPORFLY. And we have a slightly more considerable amount of rubber here in the ALPHAFLY 3 in the heel, which does seem to be doing a reasonable job of protecting that exposed foam. It looks like it's better here in the VAPORFLY 3, but it's still torn and kind of chewed up a little. Just some slightly closer views there. You can see that ZoomX foam just isn't really cut out as an exposed midsole foam. I'm quite impressed actually by the resistance to wear in both of these models, though you know, they are on the more expensive side of life. Again, I'm just finding the ALPHAFLY 3 a little bit more versatile in terms of outsole so far, though it is a pain to try and remove all the debris from these kind of open sections of the midsole and outsole. It really does collect up in there, especially this time of year. So if I had to choose one out of the two for outsole, it would definitely be the ALPHAFLY 3. On cornering, there's no comparison. Putting all that together, I'm quite surprised I would opt for the ALPHAFLY 3 if I could only have one pair right now. It's been super effective for those long runs as well, on a Sunday of course, and it's just a more durable design this time around, way more durable than the last version, that's for sure. Whereas the VAPORFLY 3 seemed to lose the magic after 100 miles. I mean, it still feels decent, you could use it for training, yes. The ALPHAFLY 3 is kind of improving with each run, which is really odd. It's the first time I've had that experience really in a Nike shoe. I can see myself getting maybe 300-400 miles out of this one. I probably won't do that because I've got a whole stack of shoes that need testing, but I'm certainly enjoying using it right now. I shan't be far off 100 miles this week actually, as I build up ready for the Yeovil Half Marathon next weekend. Will I be using my brand new pair of the ALPHAFLY 3 for that race? I haven't decided upon my race shoe yet. I'm going to do that this week in some of my training runs. But it's certainly in the running, no pun intended. Do you agree with my comparisons between these two models? Let me know your thoughts and experiences down in the comments. Very quick musical interlude for you. Sticking with that sort of early 90s hardcore rave music. The Slammer by Chrome and Time. It's always been one of my favourites right from when I first heard it. Remember having a 12-inch version of that. Remember the blue cover with the robot on the front. Very, very iconic. Starts off with those TB303 sort of acid sounds. Clearly some loop that they'd nicked from somewhere else. And some of the classic hardcore sort of stabs playing the melody. The Amen Brothers break in this track, particularly noisy and kind of distorted, all adds to the excitement really. There seems to be just a standard sine wave used as the sub-bass element of the track, which really provides lots of energy. Almost sounds like there's a dog barking at one section of the track. Not entirely sure it is. It's probably some other sound, but that's what it sounds like to me. Almost a sort of reggae, dub, or sort of junglist style element with the pianos and the delay on those pianos later in the track. You even get some chipmunk vocals as well, which was really big at the time and seems to have come back of recent time too. You can clearly hear that Chrome and Time had used some sort of drum machine to sort of accent the different elements of the breakbeat in this to provide more power and propulsion. All round it's just a fantastic track and holds up by today's standards even now. It's a really good running tune. Go and check it out, The Slammer by Chrome and Time. Thanks for tuning in people, hope you enjoyed today's video. Please hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up like, it really helps out. My name's EDDBUD and I'll be seeing you